Hey, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another session of The Sanctuary. This is our space for reflection, growth, and connection. I'm your girl and guide, Mariah Myles, licensed therapist, minister, and overall creative, and I am so glad you're here with me today. As we wrap up March, a month focused on mindfulness, we'll also reflect on what we've learned about ourselves and the challenges we face in our healing journeys. Today, we will be exploring how to break free from old habits and make meaningful changes. And of course, we continue to follow along with the prompts and somatic practices from my journal, Busy Minds, Peaceful Hearts. So sit back, relax. It's time to tune in. I've been sitting with this idea since our last session together. This idea around the cycle of healing and relapse. Healing is rarely a straightforward path, right? Something we have continued to explore with our time together. As healing in itself often resembles this winding road, lots of ups and downs, right? And I think that many people may find themselves having this sense of making progress. Maybe that's like 10 steps forward, which, feels pretty good, only to experience some sort of backpedaling, some sort of setback, maybe, right? Like where you're stumbling back 150 feet. You know what I mean? And this can be incredibly frustrating. It can lead to feelings of defeat. I know. I've been there. And they say something really ridiculous about how forming new habits can take something like 66 days. Okay, so maybe really research says 18 to 254 days. Depending on the person, the circumstances, yada, 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 you get it. There's no set time when this new habit can form, and that feels daunting. So this brings me back to this useful framework for understanding this process of behavioral change. And it's called the trans-theoretical model, which can really be applied to everyday habits, not just severe addictions. You might notice that we're using some terms often linked to addiction, like relapse. And that's intentional because many of the habits we form can have addictive qualities. Think about it. Behaviors like binge watching, maybe some excessive shopping with money you don't have, or even social media use, ongoing scrolling, binge eating, going out, talking to lots of different people, dating lots of different people. Obviously, there are different degrees of harm here, but these habits can become compulsive. And I think that that's what makes it really difficult to change. And it's important to recognize that breaking free from these habits can feel just as tough as overcoming other obstacles. But framing it in this way helps us to see the broader impact of habits in our lives, how the stages of change can apply to any behavior we want to modify. So when we talk about relapse here, it's really about understanding that slipping back into old habits can happen to anyone. And it's part of the process of change. I feel like this perspective encourages us to be more compassionate with ourselves, with others, as we navigate our own journeys of change. So the trans-theoretical model of change is not something I created. It was developed by Professor Prochaska and psychologist and researcher Dr. DiClemente. And this was like 40 or 50 years ago. But the research seems to still be relevant. This model describes stages of change as specifically to behaviors, but as you have a pre-contemplation, a contemplation, a preparation, an action, maintenance, and finally, relapse. Because recovery doesn't follow a straight path. People often jump between these stages. So say someone may feel motivated, right? We've all had bouts of that. I'm super motivated. And they take action. But then there's a setback, which might push them back to pre-contemplation, where they begin to question whether the change is even necessary. Recovery is a healing journey. It's not a destination. And that's why relapses can happen. They're not a sign of failure. And that's why they've been put into the stages, so that we know what to expect. It's going to happen. Our habits have been grooved into our brain and our pathways. And they have been formed over time. Probably longer than the 66 days that it takes to form a new habit. Because it was a habit and it had to be formed at one point, right? In thinking of relapse, they are valuable learning experiences. Each time someone navigates a relapse, they can gain new insights, strategies that could ultimately help them in their recovery. Those insights and strategies are supporting and building the resilience and the understanding that healing takes time. This path is just so unique, right, for everyone. We can't really say this is the how-to. Someone might share their story of how it went for them, and we might use it as the model, right? And I think that that's why we say that there's no straight path. People jump between stages. Habits are hard to form because everyone is different. But not so different that we don't have an idea. We have an outline. We have the bones of it. We just have to put it to work for us. So this awareness can help you approach your journey with some self-compassion, right? Because it's normal to experience those setbacks. We've been talking about it. Everyone's experienced them. And understanding that you're still moving through the stages can also alleviate some of that frustration. And as we discuss these stages, I think it's really important to recognize that relapse does not mean failure. It's part of the process. I know I already said it, but I feel like I have to say it again. It gives us an opportunity to learn more about ourselves and what almost triggers our old habits. And that word always doesn't sit well with me. So I'm going to use the word activation, just so we have like a working understanding of the language. By identifying those activators, whether they're emotional stressors or environmental cues or maybe even social situations, we can develop strategies to manage them more effectively. So let's take a moment to reflect on this. And I invite you to think about a time when you faced a setback in your own personal journey. I'll give you a moment. Is anything coming up? What are you noticing? Can you identify what stage you might have been in? Perhaps what activated that relapse? And feel free to actually pause the recording here, pull out your journal, or just let yourself reflect. So now that we've created that little space to explore those setbacks, I want to bring up a concept that's pretty crucial for understanding our healing journeys. That's spiritual bypassing. Have you heard that before? You might have. I feel like it's one of those special keywords that got tossed around a couple of years ago. Or maybe it still is. But spiritual bypassing is when people use spiritual beliefs or practices to avoid dealing with their emotional pain, their unresolved issues. And I think it's important to recognize that while spirituality can be a powerful tool for that healing, because it can be, I attest to that, it can also sometimes serve as a way to sidestep difficult emotions. That's that bypassing. You might have had someone tell you, just think positive thoughts. Or maybe they said something like, everything happens for a reason, which feels like a way to dismiss or maybe even minimize their pain or your pain. And I'm not saying that it's intentional. I'm not saying that at all. And while those statements can be comforting, they can also really hinder that genuine healing. Because when we bypass our feelings, we miss that pivotal opportunity to process and learn from them. It's quite literally like putting a Band-Aid on a wound without even addressing what the issue is. I mean, what if you needed 15 stitches? Just put a Band-Aid on it. Genuine healing requires us to face our emotions head on, no matter how uncomfortable they may be. It's about allowing ourselves to feel, to reflect, to ultimately grow from those experiences. Yeah? And when we spiritually bypass, we're dismissing our feelings, null and void. It's like that feeling when someone doesn't acknowledge what you've shared. Hello, am I talking to thin air? When maybe you were being extremely emotionally open and they just walk right by you. That doesn't feel good. And of course, there is research that shows that individuals who engage in authentic emotional processing tend to have better mental health outcomes. And when we sit with our feelings instead of avoiding them, we create this true space for healing. And yes, of course, this is where mindfulness comes into play. Could you sense that I was building up to it? Mindfulness encourages us to observe our thoughts and feelings without judgment, right? Helping us to confront those challenges rather than escape from them. This is what we have been cultivating all month. Mindfulness can help us develop a compassionate awareness of our emotional states. It allows us to acknowledge our pain without feeling overwhelmed by it. It's really paving that way for that genuine healing. Maybe take a moment here. Let yourself reflect on your own experiences with spiritual bypassing. Have there been times when you've used spiritual practice to avoid dealing with difficult emotions? Again, feel free to pause the recording and jump back in with us when you're ready, because I'll be here. And this has my brain kind of jumping all over the place, but it also has me thinking about attachment theory, which of course is really fascinating to me. It's interesting in the way that it helps us understand how our early relationships really shape our emotional responses and behaviors as adults. I did not create this either. It was developed by John Bowlby and Mary Ainsworth eons ago, and this theory explains how the bonds were formed in childhood, infancy even, which influence our relationships later in life. There are different attachment styles. I'm sure you've heard of this, maybe on social media or what have you, but these attachment styles are secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized. And each style affects how we connect with ourselves and others. So an individual with a secure attachment style might tend to be more comfortable with intimacy. Maybe they're also equally comfortable with emotional expression. And while those with more of an anxious or avoidant style, they might struggle with some vulnerability. Right? And so that's like that avoidance. Something about being close to this emotional intimacy makes me feel so uncomfortable. I'm leaping out of my skin. I just can't do it. The important part here, though, is that these attachment styles are not fixed. While they can be deeply ingrained, they can also change over time. So our experiences, our relationships, our personal growth can actually help us develop healthier attachment styles. Quite literally, it's like retraining your body to regulate itself and feel comfortable in those type of relationships. Someone with an anxious attachment style can learn to build a more secure sense of self, maybe through mindfulness, through therapy, and supportive relationships. I mean, we do some of the biggest and best healing through our relationships, through those old wounds that come up, that get activated only when we're in really intimate relationships. Because oftentimes there's boundaries with friends or acquaintances or coworkers that don't allow for us to become so intimate that we get activated in that way, right? We might be able to regulate ourselves a little bit more. And when we have awareness of our attachment styles and are actively working on our emotional regulation, this is the chance that we can break free from those patterns that no longer serve us, right? And different people and relationships can bring out different attachment styles. I think that the shift can significantly impact our relationships as we work on ourselves, as we create opportunities for deeper connections and healthier interactions with others. It's not just a gift for us, right? Because we benefit so much when we can connect deeply with others. But all this other stuff that we come with makes it really hard to do that. So it's essential to kind of recognize that while our early experiences shaped us, they don't have to define us forever. But you got to do the work. And by understanding your attachment style, we can begin to shift those patterns into something more supportive, something more in alignment. And sometimes there's a significant emotional impact from these attachment styles and old habits. Because when we struggle with emotional regulation, it can really lead to increased anxiety, depression, a sense of disconnection from ourselves and others. Individuals who are caught in this cycle of negative self-talk or self-doubt, you might see this in the way that they may withdraw from relationships. They may become avoidant, which only perpetuates feelings of loneliness. And the cycle just becomes pretty vicious. And sometimes it really feels like it's hard to break. But it doesn't have to define us forever. Do the work. Let's breathe together here. Inhaling through the nose. And a long exhale through the mouth. I'm going to encourage that you take another pause in the recording and allow yourself to reflect on your own attachment style. What patterns do you notice in your relationships? How do these patterns influence your emotional responses? So pause and come on back. All right. So we talked about how mindfulness can play a transformative role in breaking free from those old habits, right? Because mindfulness, as we know, is about being fully present in the moment, observing our thoughts and feelings without judgment. And this practice can help us become more aware of our habitual responses and those activators that lead us right back to those old patterns. So what is happening in those moments? Be curious. What are we feeling? What are you feeling? And when we practice mindfulness, we begin to develop this greater awareness of our emotional states. I think a good example of this is if you feel the urge to almost revert back to an old habit. Mindfulness allows you to pause and recognize that urge without automatically acting on it. You can imagine that you have a giant pause button. Just hit that like you're slamming on the brakes. But you got to acknowledge it. Acknowledge what you're reaching for. What habit are you reaching for? And you also got to acknowledge what you're feeling in that moment that makes you reach for that sense of comfort, whatever that habit is comforting you, is soothing, right? What are you feeling in that moment that you didn't want to feel? What are you avoiding there? As a society, we are still learning how to manage our emotions. And a study that was published in Psychological Science found that individuals who practice mindfulness are better equipped to handle their emotions and self-regulate, which can significantly reduce the likelihood of relapse into old habits. So there is hope. We can create a space between the activator and our response. And this is what you've been doing. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can choose how we want to respond. But this just doesn't happen overnight. This is a practice. I don't know how many of you grew up with your parents hitting the pause button to have a mindful moment with you, or to check in with your emotions and encourage you to check in with what you were feeling when you had a negative behavior. You probably just got in trouble. So this is your opportunity to reparent yourself. And maybe that opportunity comes with a sense of self-compassion, right? Because mindfulness really encourages us to treat ourselves with kindness, especially when we have those setbacks. So instead of criticizing yourself for relapsing into old patterns, maybe we can approach our experiences with understanding. Maybe you give yourself a redo. I think it really does help reduce the shame that is often associated with relapse, or perhaps a negative behavior, right? I'm thinking about childhood when we got in trouble for a negative behavior, then that might have created some sense of shame. And I wonder if that comes up for you in these moments. All right, so to help support you in building your mindfulness and self-awareness practice, I'm going to guide you through a grounding exercise. So let's give yourself a moment to find a comfortable position. And you may sit or stand. Maybe you're in a quiet space where you won't be disturbed. Whatever feels right to you. And you may choose to close your eyes here or lower your gaze. And gently allow yourself to inhale deeply through your nose. Allow your belly to expand and then exhale slowly through your mouth. Allow your awareness to tune into your body. With each breath, notice any sensations. Perhaps how your feet feel on the ground. Maybe you notice the weight of your body and where it settles. Noticing the rise and fall of your chest with each breath. Gently allowing yourself to observe your thoughts. Noticing if you are resisting them. And see if you can just let your thoughts come in and just notice. Maybe you're having thoughts about old habits, activators. Just acknowledge these thoughts without judgment. You might say to yourself, I notice I'm thinking about, and name whatever you're noticing, and that's okay. And see if you can allow yourself to return to your breath. Inhaling, exhaling. With each inhale, maybe you imagine inviting in calmness. With each exhale, perhaps visualize letting go of any tension. And just be here for a few breaths, noticing. Gently begin to bring your awareness back into the room. Wiggling your fingers and toes, deepening your breathing, noticing how your body has settled, any movements you might need here, and when you're ready, gently opening your eyes if they were closed. What would it feel like to bring this practice into your daily life? And since we're already here in this space, we're going to move into another somatic practice. Double the dose today. This one has a lot more physical movement, and it can help release stored tension and emotions. This one's called somatic shaking. It's a great way to connect with our bodies and let go of what no longer serves you. It's instinctive, it's natural, just to release any pent-up energy and emotions. So perhaps you're already comfortable from that last guided practice, but feel free to shift where you are. And I invite you to stand up or find another comfortable position where you can move freely. Maybe you find a clear space and take a deep breath, just to center yourself here. And maybe you opened your mouth and just kind of let it go, that deep breath. And with your feet firmly planted on the ground, take another inhale. This time filling your lungs completely like we do, right? Allowing your belly to swell, and hold that breath at the top for a moment. And as you exhale, start by gently shaking your fingers, bringing in, shaking your hands, your wrist, and still keep it gentle, loose. Gradually let the shaking spread to your arms, your shoulders. Let your torso get in it. Allow your legs to begin to move and shake. Maybe you started with your toes, giving them a wiggle. Brought in your feet and your ankles until your whole leg was moving and shaking. And now let's invite that movement to travel through your entire body. Allow the movement to be spontaneous. Make sure you're not forcing the shaking, but to allow it to gradually increase in intensity and maybe some vigor. Maybe you incorporate some swaying. Maybe you're bending. Maybe you're even jumping. And I'm going to invite you to be here in this space for a few moments, maybe 2 or 3 minutes, finding that release. Notice if there's anything that's hindering you from fully letting go. And maybe you let the shaking become a way to release any stress, any worries. With each shake, maybe you imagine you're letting go of anything that no longer serves you. What are you noticing? What's this feel like? And maybe you begin to slow things down some. And as you do, notice how your body is feeling, how your breath is moving. Are you noticing any shifts in your energy or your emotions? And when you're ready, we can start allowing your movements to become a little bit more gentle. And then gradually becoming still. What are you noticing? Deep breath in, and deep breath out. This practice allows you to reconnect with your body and release what you've been holding on to. You might want to pause the recording and maybe reach for your journal, take a few breaths and let yourself have some reflection time. I feel that after this practice, it's kind of essential to reflect on the experience. What came up for you? Were you able to notice the sensations or the thoughts or your reactions? I wonder, how did it feel to engage in shaking? Remember, this practice is a tool you can use anytime you feel overwhelmed or stuck, because it brings awareness to your body and your emotions and really helps you to navigate your healing process more effectively. And so, if you're already coming back to join us, March has been our month of mindfulness, hasn't it? And as we look back on what we've learned, I wonder how you've grown. Have any of your mindfulness practices shaped your experiences? Mindfulness is not just about being present, it's also about becoming aware of our habits and our emotional responses. And reflecting on our experiences can help us identify challenges that we faced. What were some moments this month when you found it difficult to stay mindful, or when you fell back into old habits? And you can pause to reflect. That's always an invitation. And before we wrap up today's session, I want to throw out one more word: accountability. What does that even look like? To me, accountability is about recognizing when we slip back into old patterns, and really when we got to be honest with ourselves, when we got to keep it 100. So here are a few quick ways to make accountability work for you, just to help you out. 1. Self-reflection. Regularly checking in with yourself by asking, Am I sticking to my goals? What patterns am I noticing? 2, share your goals. Tell a friend or a family member about what you want to change, because having someone to support you can really boost your motivation. And 3, build your support network, because surrounding yourself with positive people who can encourage your growth can really keep you on track. But that's not it. I want to also give you some practical strategies to help you break those old habits while being kind to yourself. 1, set clear goals. Define what you want to change. Write it down. Keep it front and center. 2, create a relapse prevention plan. Here you'll identify your activators and plan how to respond when they come up. And this will help you stay proactive. Number 3, your mindfulness practices. I know you already have them, but incorporate a simple mindfulness exercise each day so you can stay aware of your thoughts and feelings. 4, you guessed it, journaling. You already do it, so continue to use journaling to reflect on your process. It can help you track progress and recognize those patterns. And lastly, 5, celebrate the small wins, because when you reward yourself for the progress, no matter how small, it keeps you motivated. So remember, it's all about progress, not perfection, and breaking free from old habits takes time. So be patient with yourself. Once again, thank you for being here, either on whatever channel you're joining us by. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you never miss a session here at The Sanctuary. Still welcoming your experiences. I want to hear your sanctuary voice. It's been a while since I shared a sanctuary voice, and so let's get back at that. What does healing look like for you, or whatever else you want to share? I'm here for it. Remember, you can connect at thesanctuarywithmoriahmyles@gmail.com, altogether no spaces, or head over to IG. That's my_Mariah. Oh shoot, I should go check that because it's been a while. Until next time, embrace each breath and remember, our bodies have this innate wisdom, the beautiful ability to heal itself. And we heal best in community. Peace, y'all. While this podcast may feel like a therapeutic conversation, it is important to note that it is not a substitute for professional therapy or mental health. The information shared here is intended solely for educational purposes and should not be used as a replacement for personalized mental health care. Although I am a therapist, I'm not acting as your therapist in this setting. If you are in need of support, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional.